All right, David, thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate your time tonight. We are just going to talk a little bit about new acquisition for the Phoenix Suns, Chandler Hutchison. Now, just to recap, he's on a two-way contract. He's still being paid by the Spurs for the rest of the for this whole next year, and so he's got his income. Now with the Suns, he has a part-time deal at least with the big club. So we're just kind of curious what is Chandler Hutchison? Who is Chandler Hutchison? So I've got a few questions for David. Thank you very much for coming on tonight.
My pleasure. In answer to your questions, and I'm sure you'll ask a couple more, what is Chandler Hutchison? I mean, he's a player who's got some potential, but he's also a player that's been on 4 teams now in 6 months. That's not usually a very good thing for anybody in any sport. Who he is, that's even more of a question that just can't be answered because he's fairly private. When he was here in Chicago, which was his longest stay, he was drafted by the Bulls, late first round, number 22. His college career, to be honest with you, Dave, it got better and better. Really nothing his freshman and sophomore year. Then he blossomed his junior year. And his senior year, made him a first-round pick, end of the first round for the Bulls. It's funny because I look at on his now with the Suns, they say small forward, power forward. He's about as much a power forward as you or I are. And, neither one of us are, and neither is he. He's 6'6", 210. He's not a power forward, but he's got potential. I'll leave him at that. He had one stretch with the Bulls after he had a foot injury that knocked him out for a long time, and he came back, and you could see his potential. He can slash and get to the basket if he's motivated to do so. Unfortunately, like a lot of other players, he came up with COVID. He disappeared for a while. And then the real enigma with him, Dave, and there's no answer, at least from my end, he didn't play for a long stretch even after the COVID. And they said that he missed time for personal issues, of which, how private teams can be. We never found out what those personal issues were. He sat a lot of times in uniform or in street clothes on the bench, never got into the games. We're told never really practiced with the team either. And then when he ultimately got traded to Washington, he played the first game he got there. So something was going on. I don't know if it was a personal issue with another player, with a coach. Don't know. That's the real enigma about Chandler Hutchison. But talent-wise, I think he's got some talent, and hopefully he gets an opportunity and maybe shows himself.
Yeah, it's going to be tough for him to get minutes on the Suns. They didn't even play their 10th overall pick last year, Jalen Smith. Hardly any minutes this past year. And I don't know if they'll play him again this year because the Suns are on a championship, path right now. A surprise, as surprising as it is, a championship path. I mean, shoot, they hadn't made the playoffs 10 straight years. Then all of a sudden, I felt a little bad for our own Jalen Smith and that he didn't get a chance to get on the court hardly because the Suns were winning almost every game and Chris Paul is demanding perfection out of every single play on the court. Heck, DeAndre Ayton had a hard enough time playing. But at the same time, Monty Williams did play Abdel Nader last year, surprisingly more minutes than we expected. And Abdel Nader is a athletic small forward who plays, who's long, he plays with speed and energy. And I'm wondering if they see similar in Chandler Hutchison. Did he look like he knew what he was doing on the court when he was out there?
Not initially, but that happens to a lot of young players, rookies. I mean, I can go all the way back to Jimmy Butler, who now is, a top 15 player in the NBA. But when he first came into the league, I mean, he was lost in the ozone. And I would say that Chandler Hutchison was pretty much the same way. But like I said, after he had that foot injury, he came back and he had about a 10 to 15 game stretch. He was coming off the bench, of course, and it seemed like the light went on with him. And his forte, at least from what we could tell, was slashing and going to the basket. His outside shot is not up to snuff, to be honest with you. I looked it up just to make sure. I mean, he's only shooting 30%. Not that he's had that much opportunity, but only 30% from three. And that's just not good enough in the NBA, especially from the small forward position. So, if he can just harness what he's good at and get better at things that he's not, And the reason I think the Suns or other teams might take a chance on a guy like him in this COVID era, you just don't know game to game, week to week, who's going to be active, who's going to be all of a sudden out for a 10 to 20 days or who knows what. Him being one of them once upon a time. So it's probably a wise idea for a championship team to take a chance on a guy like this.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting because Monty Williams does pride himself on playing guys who are going to play right, and Chris Paul won't stand for mistakes. But if he limits himself to slashing, and like we've seen on some of the highlights, I mean, he can move in that open floor in transition, and he knows how to just go attack the basket, which the Suns don't have a lot of. Was he given the best chance? Like, I know you said that he had some games and where he didn't even dress, wasn't really practicing, so you didn't know quite what was going on. Did you feel like he got the best opportunities to succeed in Chicago, or do you think it was just tough because of all the kids and all the losing and all that?
Well,
I don't know.
Good question. Obviously, he was drafted by an administration that's no longer even there, to be honest with you. John Paxson was in charge, vice president of basketball operations, and now he's subsequently has been replaced by Arturas Karnisovas. So, a lot of guys, maybe Chandler Hutchison being one of them, is enamored by one guy who drafted him, and then the next guy comes in who, it's like a girl. You might think she's pretty, the other guy thinks she's not pretty. I'll just leave it at that. Did he get the opportunities? No, I really don't think he got the opportunities. And then, like I said, some things happened to him, whether it was COVID or that foot injury. And then, like I said, something else happened of which we weren't able to pin it down. And I followed it, when he went to Washington. Again, early on, he seemed to get some shots at getting on the court, and then all of a sudden he was relegated once again to the bench. So, again, we weren't in practice because a lot of this was during the COVID era, and certainly even when we were at practice before that, we don't really know what's going on behind closed doors. I just don't know what his relationship was. And we had a couple of different coaches while he was here also. Jim Boylan, who's no longer, around. I don't even know where he is. And then obviously Billy Donovan came in. So, that just happens to a lot of players. They just got sort of caught in the shuffle, and sometimes they're shuffled out.
Did it seem like you talked about the coaches there? Did it seem like either Boylan or Donovan handled him differently as far as his role on the court, or was he pretty much the same role, both coaches?
Hard to say, because under Donovan, you really didn't see him on the court at all.
Gotcha.
I mean, once Donovan came there, again, something went on. I can't pinpoint.
I get it. Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I'm looking at his game log right now, and he did hardly play all year. So that is strange.
Yeah.
But then he goes to Washington. His first game, as you say, he played his first game. Well, he played pretty well too. Yeah. I mean, he had 18 points and 5 rebounds in his first game for Washington. And then I don't think he scored one more double-digit game. And like you said, he was kind of less and less minutes throughout the year. And then he barely touched the court in the playoffs. So, but at least he got some playoff action.
Yeah, I saw it. I mean, he appeared in 2 of Washington's playoff games, probably both losses, I'm guessing, and it came in late in those games.
Yep.
I just, again, I can't really answer what happened in Washington. I'm hard pressed to answer what happened here in Chicago, to be honest with you. But again, I do recall that 10 to 15 game stretch when apparently he was healthy. He was able to show himself, and he was more aggressive during that stretch than he was at any other time. And that's why he was productive. And that happens to a lot of players too. You know what? Forget, you're being dormant or passive. Do what you do best. And that for him is going to the basket. And he proved himself, at least during that stretch.
During his rookie and sophomore years, he got a lot more playing time. So we don't know what happened this past year. But I mean, he played in, he even got 14 starts as a rookie. And he played in more than half the games. Did you see anything there? Is he better on defense, better on offense? Did he show anything at all, or is he just kind of one of the guys?
Well, he was known to be a good defender coming out of college. I mean, that was his MO. If I even go back, remembering the draft and reading the draft report on him. I don't really recall him being a world beater on the defensive end of the court. What I do remember, though, that when he was drafted, and John Paxson again talked about how he greatly matured, which again, the numbers support, from the beginning of his college career until, like I said, I think his senior year, he averaged over 20 points and like 7 rebounds. So he made himself,
and 3.5 assists too.
Okay. And unfortunately, right now in the NBA, he's not even averaging an assist a game. I mean, I took a look at his career totals. So that's not his forte either. But, they talked about him being sort of a heady kind of player. God, I really wish I could tell you, that there's enough data on him visually or even numbers wise to support that. But looking back on it, I just honestly can't say that I can, support all that kind of stuff. I just can't.
Yeah, that's to be fair. And again, he, there's a lot of guys who wash out of the league. I think it's, I forget the number, but I think it's like 40% of draft picks at best make it as a rotation player in the league. So he's just one of the many who may not make it there. And so we are curious in Phoenix because it's funny, James Jones has made a reputation of only bringing in guys who are really good dudes in the locker room and he prides productivity and skills over athleticism. So I'm just a little surprised that, but it's just a two-way contract. So I'm not sure it matters much either way. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. Is there, I don't want to keep you too long because there's really not much to say, but is there like any, besides the weird, besides the weird where you don't know what was going on when he wasn't practicing or playing with the team. By the way, we in Phoenix have experience with that too, even with some of our better players suddenly going into a I don't want to play mode. But do you feel like, was there any funny stories or anything about him that like happened that makes you think, oh, this is what Chandler Hutchison is all about? Did anything like that happen?
Not really. Again, the last year plus, or even year and a half, whatever it is, during COVID, we can't talk to these guys unless they're on Zoom. And
I know it's so tough.
I hate Zoom, by the way. I'll just say it's one of the worst 4-letter words ever in sports. You just can't talk to him. And even when he was a young player, when we were able to go into the locker room, he didn't really stand out. I mean, I even remember his locker was in the corner. And he was very quiet. I'd almost say shy. So no, I mean, I don't really know his personality, to be perfectly blunt. Quiet, and maybe his game, because of that, sort of suffered at least early on in his career. But I keep pinpointing, and I've probably said it 3 or 4 times now, he showed what he can do on the professional level if he's aggressive. And maybe he just needs that opportunity. Maybe he needs some prodding from whether a fellow player like Chris Paul or a coach or somebody. And Monty Williams would be a coach that I would want to play for if I had that kind of talent. If he can be aggressive and get that opportunity and show what he can do, maybe he's got a chance. But like you said, 40% of players wash out on a 2-way contract. Maybe that percentage is even higher. Who knows?
Yeah, right. All right, so thank you very much. I appreciate your time. I know he's not much of a memory for you, and I totally understand. I appreciate you giving me 15 minutes of your time, David. Thank you. Can you tell the folks where they can find you if they want to follow up on your Bulls coverage and other things you're doing?
Sure. I do a bunch of podcasts myself nowadays. On Twitter, you can follow me. My moniker is Shoe Mouse. SCHUMOUSE, the mouse, because I used to work at Disney. The 4-letter sports network once upon a time. So that's where the mouse comes from. So Shoe Mouse on Twitter. I'm on Facebook. I'm all over. You can find me on the golf course. That's where I'd like to really be found.
Well, thank you so much for your time tonight, David.
Anytime, Dave. Call me when you need me.
All right. Bye.